Tell him, Judith, I press. You both deserve it. You're not my father, Damien, she tells him, and they both start to cry. Facing one another, not touching, not speaking, powerfully locked by their gaze, grief washes over them. You've been a bastard, she goes on. Damien, you know you have, in your own right, a lying, cheating fuck. She lowers her eyes. We wait. But you're not my father, she tells him. For a long while she sits, crying softly, arms limp at her side. I'm sorry, Damien whispers. I'm so dreadfully sorry. Judith glances up at me from her chair, her body straining towards her husband. Want to go? I ask. She nods. Go. I say, go. She crosses the room to Damien, who gathers her up in his arms. They rock together, holding tight, too overwhelmed to speak. Healing is the last phase of the process. Healing occurs when the blatant one, for our purposes he, after considerable learning and effort, begins, like Damien, to deliver. And then the latent one, she, feels his change and welcomes it. Progress and response begin to chase each other like kids on a playground, reinforcing, or said differently, having fun. The more responsible he shows himself to be, the more relaxed she becomes. The more relaxed she becomes, vicious cycles transform into charmed circles, wherein skill breeds skill and intimacy invites more intimacy. But even healing has its consequences. Opening up our hearts in the present means reopening our hearts to past wounds. For Judith to take possession of the happiness she'd worked hard to earn, some open ledgers had to be settled. It was time for her to give up the fight she'd had on her mother's behalf, the only template for relationship she'd ever known. In daring to be happy, she abandoned the wretchedness of both of her parents, leaving her father off the hook and leaving her mother to her own resources. It so happened that Judith's parents were still miserably alive, but her work would have been much the same even had they been dead. She, like her husband, was psychologically upwardly mobile. They were moving into a world of health that was literally beyond the parents' imagination. Crossing that border feels to many of us who surpassed the constricted, hurt lives that came before us like abandonment. When I work with clients about this issue, I speak of it as keeping a parent spiritual company. Keeping spiritual company means uniting with them by inhabiting the same kind of world that they live in. A fighting world, a mistrustful one, a country with no rules, or one so rule-bound no one can move in it. Crossing out of patriarchy into healthy relatedness means, for most of us, leaving behind that particular version of patriarchy that riddled and deformed our families. Usually we emigrate. Those in the old land from which we hailed seldom choose to make that same journey. Soon after our session, Judith had a dream in which she encounters her mother in a burning building. She tries to lift her mother up onto her shoulders, but the smoke overwhelms her. I can't leave you here, she cries in her dream. But it's what I want for you. Her dream mother answers, I'm your mother, you're my child. Don't you think I want you to escape? In the final phase of treatment, as new patterns of putting out and receiving begin to take hold, as the upset engendered by intimacy is faced, the couple is ready to wean from our therapy. Conventional psychology uses the language of internalization. The skills, the containment, the very kindness the partners once leaned on me to provide, it would be said, they now come to incorporate. They can do that now, the punchline would go, all by themselves. But I'm a relational therapist. I don't believe anyone does much of anything all by himself. The couple, in this final phase, transitions from the acute work of restoring intimacy to the lifelong challenge of preserving it. Their last task will be creating a network around each and both of them for support, stimulation, and guidance. Every one of us who is committed to the cultivation of intimacy needs to create such a subculture around us, a community that understands and nurtures our values, as mainstream culture does not. Existing friendships can be deepened as we reveal ourselves more honestly and invite the same. Men's groups, women's groups, workshops, service to others, anything helps so long as it lifts us out of the lie of better than, less than, and reinforces our growth and connection. It is a tough, anti-relational world out there. The old terms have been with us for a very long time. We should expect to get caught up in them sometimes, losing our way. That's when help from those who know and love us is essential. Women have been quite successful in building an empowerment subculture. Adult men now stand in desperate need of similar nurture, as do our growing sons. Recalling the support our daughters enjoy in their efforts to be whole, and contrasting that to the daunting lack of support for our sons, we see how much work lies ahead of us in helping boys. And couples need such a community for nurture as well. Other adults we can speak to honestly will neither deny our pain nor push their own agenda. It is time to extend the net of empowerment that has begun to encircle girls to both sexes. Time for women and men to join with one another and lift a veil that has covered us both. Doing whatever I can to help foster the growth of such a relationship-cherishing subculture has become my life's work. And there are legions out there just like me. Researchers, educators, clinicians, in his or her way, giving voice to one clear, simple message. Patriarchy is over. We needn't live like this any longer.